Freedom Central is in Edinburgh, talking to Robert Greene, fellow journalist, truth seeker, information warrior. The last time we spoke with Robert on our radio show, he had been arrested by Grampian police and is facing charges for trying to bring justice against senior figures of Scottish parliamentary and law enforcement circles for the brutal rape and abuse of Hollie Greig, a Down syndrome sufferer.
No, Hollie Greig, nobody must talk about Hollie Greig. That's the end of the line if anybody talks about Hollie Greig. He said it is the most horrific thing you have ever heard, that the case itself is horrifying, and the degree in which the Scottish authorities have gone to cover this terrible story up would take your breath away. And I was staggered by this, and I thought, this is somehow the Dark Ages. Surely wherever you go, mostly in Western Europe, Americas, this sort of thing, if you're arrested and you have the opportunity of having a lawyer present, have legal advice. Not only that, but the evidence that can be collected from such an interview is admissible under the Scottish court system. Would you believe? So you get threatened, you confess, and they say, wait, we've got you, and that goes to the court that you've confessed. They might want any tactic they want. It almost beggars belief that this is going on in a so-called Western country, and this is what we're talking about. It sounds like Nazi Germany, it sounds like Stalinist Soviet Union, doesn't it? But it's right here in Scotland. It indicates the lengths that the authorities will go to actually prevent this case coming into the public domain. I get very annoyed about Prime Minister David Cameron going around the world lecturing to different countries about human rights abuses and democracy. I believe he's been recently lecturing the Chinese about this. Now, if I were the Chinese, I would tell him exactly where to stick his lecture on human rights. It is absolutely at the height of hypocrisy. He's got to start dealing with things in his own country. It's a disgrace. And Mr. Cameron, you know about this, and you should do the honourable thing and call for public, independent and open, full investigation into the Hollie Greig case.
Robert, what a journey. Let's start from the beginning. How did you become involved in pursuing justice for Hollie?
Well, I became involved initially in October 2008. I was working on another case in England, and as a result of some of the media coverage I received from it was nothing to do with paedophilia or sex abuse. It was to do with the travel industry and corruption in the Metropolitan Police. But as a result of that, I was asked to make a speech at the conference of an organisation called Scotland Against Crooked Lawyers, the chairman of which is Stuart Usher, a very patriotic and loyal Scot. And I gave a presentation, and afterwards Stuart approached me and said, could I possibly help one of the ladies that he'd been trying to help, or two ladies who'd had to flee Scotland as a result of terrible atrocities inflicted on the daughter who suffered from Down syndrome and had to flee to England. And I didn't live too far away from them, about 60 miles away, and he said, could I just talk to them? Well, I had an awful lot on my plate with the case that I was dealing with at the time, and didn't really have a lot of opportunity to really do the work that I wanted to do. So I said, well, I'll try, but I've really got something that preoccupies me at the moment. Anyway, he persuaded me to talk to this lady. He said it is the most horrific thing you have ever heard, that the case itself is horrifying, and the degree in which the Scottish authorities have gone to cover this terrible story up would take your breath away. So he said, but they are really nice ladies, the mother and daughter. Would you talk to them, please? So I rang, made the call, and of course the lady is Hollie Greig, and I spoke to her for about 2 hours on the telephone, and I was enormously impressed with her. I was enormously impressed with her dignity and her grasp of the situation, the fact that she had retained vital documents with which I could not have proceeded, but most of all I was impressed by her extraordinary courage. I told her that if I was going to deal with the case, it would be a rough ride, because I played pretty hard, and of course the adversaries really like to hit back any way they can. And I said, it's going to be pretty tough on you. I'll try and do my best for you, but it's going to be hard on you as well as me. But she said, I don't care. She said, don't care how hard it is. I promise you, I'll stick by you on this. If you can if you can bring these people to justice and prevent further atrocities taking place that will affect other children, other mothers, then I'll be very grateful. I'll back you all the way. And she's been absolutely true to her word. And when I later met her daughter Hollie, she's a wonderful, strong, very, very nice person who's got enormous courage herself. So two women, mother and daughter, incredible, ordinary ladies, just nice, ordinary ladies in many ways, with this extraordinary quality of tremendous determination and unquenchable courage. So yes, that's how I got into it anyway.
I know it's obviously difficult to talk about some of the more sensitive parts, just so that the people at Freedom Central get an understanding.
Yes.
Can we talk about a little bit more detail of the abuse? What was it that Hollie was subjected to?
One of the things I will say is that when I first took on the story and learned more information, I have to explain firstly, because Hollie has Down syndrome, the information tends to come out in spasmodically. It doesn't all come out all at the same time as it would do with perhaps people who didn't have that condition. Down syndrome sufferers tend to have excellent memories, photographic memories, but do not really have a great concept of the intangibles. Time perhaps is particularly one that comes to mind. So Hollie doesn't have a great concept of time, but she has got a tremendous concept and memory of detail. And so when she started telling me all the things that were happening, they really were horrific. And I have to say, much of it that I've learned since February, when I was arrested, is far more horrific than I can possibly say at this present time. We have a great deal of information, but people will be absolutely horrified and shocked and sickened about what has happened, and they're going to be even more angry with the Scottish authorities to actually protect these people and also to enable these people to carry on abusing other children and the disabled, which must be happening at this very time, knowing that the gang have the protection of the Scottish government. Okay. So that's the background. But as far as what has happened is concerned, Hollie was abused by a father and then a brother and then a gang. Initially 16, now it's gone up to 22, and the gang included a member of the judiciary, senior police officer, bank manager, a solicitor, 2 social workers, including Hollie's own carer, 2 nurses, fire officer, and several others, partners and that sort of thing. It's an absolutely horrific story, and Hollie has gone into great detail about it. I've heard her give her an interview to the police. I've heard her being interviewed by various people in the media, including the BBC. Her story never changes. It's the same over and over again. And Hollie has been certified by top medical experts, not only as a competent witness, which is important with someone who has a condition like Down syndrome, because not all are competent, but Hollie is at the level where she's regarded as competent, but also as an absolutely truthful witness. There's one important issue I'd like to mention as well, is that we have a lot of medical information and psychological analysis of Hollie and her condition. It includes the fact that she was infected with a sexually transmitted disease at the age of 10, that the doctor who read that report was also concerned about her behaviour in 1992. Her behaviour was such that it would indicate that a child with her condition had had sexual experience. Hollie was 12. Those documents were passed on to the head teacher, who was subsequently found to be part of the paedophile ring, so it never got out. There also were 2 assessments after Hollie had told her mother about everything that had gone on, with an eminent psychologist in Glasgow called Dr. Jack Boyle, who quite clearly was convinced that Hollie had been sexually abused, and also a very in-depth analysis by another prominent psychologist, Dr. Eva Harding in Scotland. And again, great detail going into it, great work going in, no doubt about the abuse, no doubt about who'd done it and all the rest of it. The doctor's making absolutely clear of this. Now, when Anne protested to the police about their conduct, about Hollie and the case and her own treatment and the treatment of her brother, there became an independent police complaints commission inquiry, which I have to say I've dealt with these kind of things before, and they tend to be rather a whitewash, so I'm quite prepared to say that openly. There's very little confidence in them. However, all of the medical documents were withheld by the police from the commission, which all supported Hollie's allegations and all would potentially incriminate the abusers, including the police themselves. Those documents were withheld from the commission, and I believe that the independent commission would have reached a different, or very likely to have reached a totally different conclusion other than the whitewash that I don't think it would have been ignored if it was so strong. So this is massive corruption on behalf of Grampian Police. I think it's important for people to realise that there have also been two raids, one on my home and one on the home of Anne and Hollie. The raid on my home was conducted on Saturday the 13th of February, a day after I'd been held in custody in Aberdeen. Whilst I was being held there, 4 officers from Aberdeen came on a 700-mile round trip to come to my home in England and virtually ransacked my house, took all my documentation, all the defence I would have used against the charges against me, and also confidential information belonging to my clients. Not just, but in particular, Anne Greig. And the documents that I was holding there were to be used by Anne Greig to actually launch a prosecution against the police themselves. So the police went down, raided my home and took away privileged documents that were to be used against the police themselves. Now, are we living in a democracy, a fair society? Does anybody think that? It's happened. And those documents have never been returned to me. Some documents have been returned very recently to my new and excellent solicitor in Glasgow, but he's wading through them and I don't know what's there. No inventory was left, so I couldn't quite honestly say how much they've taken because it was just masses and masses of documentation. So far, despite continual requests, no search warrant has been produced either. And false statements have already been made by Grampian Police about the existence of such a warrant and who authorised it and signed it, which has been followed up by not only my own Member of Parliament but also the Member of Parliament for Anne, because obviously her documents have been stolen as well. So that's just another example of corruption. There's a further and perhaps even more chilling break-in which took place on the 3rd of June at the home of, this time in England. It's really alarming where the tentacles of this group stretch, and I say we're not just talking about Scotland here. It does make you wonder just how many frightened people there are in the government in the United Kingdom, let alone Scotland. Because on the 3rd of June, on the pretext of Hollie being a missing person, which is complete nonsense because they were just taking a little holiday, the police and members of Shropshire Council raided the home of Anne and Hollie, the house that they loved, and took away, spent 3 hours in the house, just a little house looking for a missing person, 3 hours, took away things from her computer, documents, photographs, and actually ransacked the house in such a way that could only cause alarm and distress when the ladies subsequently returned to the house. And I was with them when they returned, when they finally got some new keys to go back into the house. The house was in a situation that perhaps young, maybe teenage burglars might have left it in. Things thrown on the floor, doors smashed in, broken, everything. It was like a piece of vandalism. But I'm going to understand that there are 3 police officers and 2 officials from Shropshire County Council responsible for this atrocity. This is absolutely awful. And again, another attempt, in my opinion, to intimidate 2 women who are witnesses to very serious crime.
Last time we spoke with Robert on our radio show, he had been arrested by Grampian Police and is facing charges for trying to bring justice against senior figures of Scottish parliamentary and law enforcement circles for the brutal rape and abuse of Hollie Greig, a Down syndrome sufferer.
No, Hollie Greig, nobody must talk about Hollie Greig. That's the end of the line if anybody talks about Hollie Greig. He said it is the most horrific thing you have ever heard, that the case is...
Today, Freedom Central is in Edinburgh, talking to Robert Greig, fellow journalist, truth seeker, information warrior.
The evidence that can be collected from such an interview is admissible under the Scottish court system. Would you believe? So you get threatened, you confess, and they say, wait, we've got you, and that goes to the court that you've confessed. They might want any tactic they want. It almost beggars belief that this is going on in a so-called self. Horrifying, and the degree in which the Scottish authorities have gone to cover this terrible story up would take your breath away. And I was staggered by this, and I thought, this is something out of the Dark Ages. Surely wherever you go, mostly in Western Europe, Americas, this sort of thing, if you're arrested and you have the opportunity of having a lawyer present, have legal advice. Not only that, but this